Hey everybody, another video I'm doing over coffee. I'll get this uploaded. A little later this afternoon, we are going down to Willamette Valley in Oregon here. This is a place where a large meteorite was found over 100 years ago. But the funny thing is, it came probably, they're theorizing, from up here somewhere. The dating, they guesstimate 17,000 years ago. Could it have been a little more recent? Well, I think that's a possibility. Let's just read. Now, starting about 8 years ago, I've been talking about what happened at the end of the Younger Dryas period, and I know a lot of you listen to Randall Carlson and a few other people who talk about this subject. This is called the Willamette Meteorite, formerly known as the Tomanowos Meteorite, and that was named by a tribe in Oregon near where it was found. It is the largest meteorite found in North America and the sixth largest in the world. There was no impact crater at the discovery site. Researchers believe the meteorite landed in what is now Canada or Montana and was transported as a glacial erratic to the Willamette Valley during the Missoula floods at the end of the last ice age, roughly 13,000 years ago. The meteorite is on display at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, which acquired it in 1906. It has been seen by 40 million people. Now, I think I have heard of this meteorite, but I had no clue of the background history of it. Let's go over to a new article from physics.org. Here's a story that just came out yesterday. Tomanowos, the meteorite that survived megafloods and human folly. Here's a close-up of it. It says a rock with arguably the most fascinating story on Earth has an ancient name, Tomanowos. It means a visitor from heaven in the extinct language of Oregon's Clackamas Indian tribe. It says a millennia of peaceful rest in Willamette Valley ended in 1902 when an Oregon man named Ellis Hughes secretly moved the iron rock to his own land and claimed it was his property. He hauled the 15-ton rock on a wooden cart for nearly a mile, and it took him days. But the fact was, the meteorite was actually owned by the Oregon Iron and Steel Company, which owned the land in which Hughes found the meteorite. It talks about lawsuits regarding the ownership of the meteorite. It talks about how it was formed. It was part of a planet 4.5 billion years ago, and then due to an explosion, a supernova, or a collision with another planet, the thing exploded, and a shrapnel of it was sent out into space, and it landed on Earth in relative recent times. It says it hit the North American ice cap, probably in Canada, about 17,000 years ago. 15,000 BC. Over the following decades, flowing ice transported Tomanowos southward towards a glacier in the Fork River of Montana in what is now the United States. This glacier had created a 2,000-foot-high ice dam across the river, impounding the enormous Lake Missoula upstream. The ice dam crumbled when Tomanowos was nearing it, releasing one of the largest floods ever documented, the Missoula floods, which shaped the scablands of Washington state with the power of several thousand Niagara Falls. It says, while floating near what's now the city of Portland, the meteorite's iceberg broke apart, and Tomanowos, the meteorite, sank to the river bottom. It's one of hundreds of erratic rocks made of elements that do not match the local geology. I have heard Randall Carlson talk about glacial erratics. I've listened to a lot of his videos, other lectures. I've never heard of a meteorite coming down as a glacial erratic from these ice age floods. Should this be telling us something that should be obvious? Well, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. This article mentions geologist J. Harlan Bretz and Joseph P. Pardee, geologists in the early 20th century, who persisted the theory of the Missoula floods, this ice dam theory, where just a massive body of water broke free. And there are certain problems with that theory that I have found, but it's still a possibility, I guess. But it says their work also triggered one of the most significant paradigm shifts in recent geoscience, the recognition that catastrophic flooding events significantly contribute to the erosion and the evolution of landscapes. Sums it up this way. It says scientists have in the past followed the principle of uniformitarianism, which held that the Earth's landscape was sculpted by regular natural processes distributed evenly over long times. Normal floods fit into this theory, but the notion of swift, catastrophic events like the Missoula floods were somewhat heretic. The idea of huge ice age floods helped geologists a century ago prevail over pre-scientific religious explanations for unusual finds, such as how marine fossils could be found at high elevations and how giant metal rock from outer space came to rest in Oregon. Well, maybe the finds of J. Harlan Bretz and Mr. Pardee were half the story. There is a large amount of water that came down through Oregon and Washington and Montana and Idaho. Was it just one ice dam releasing, or was it a series of impacts on the ice sheet? Well, we seem to have one meteorite that hit the ice pack, they say, 15,000 BC, 17,000 years ago. Could they be off by a couple thousand years in their dating? How did they date this? I think that's entirely possible. Are we having a missing link to the whole story right here? I think it's a slight possibility. One thing I'm going to add here is Iridium. Those of us studying this time period at the beginning of the Younger Dryas, around 13,000 years ago, know there is an unexplained high level of Iridium, and it's really kind of spread out all over the Earth. What happened? Well, I find it very interesting here. It says, for example, Iridium, one of the least abundant elements in Earth's crust, is found in the Willamette meteorite at a concentration level of 4.7 parts per million, thousands of times more concentrated than in the crust. Is it possible that the Willamette meteorite was a piece of something bigger that hit us, or does this explain something about what happened at the end of the Younger Dryas period, or at the beginning of the Younger Dryas period? I wonder. Well, that was certainly an interesting story to look into. A large meteorite found here in 1902. They say it hit up here somewhere, maybe Canada, Montana. They have no idea. They talked about it being transported down in an ice age flood. An iceberg. Could it possibly have landed on top of an iceberg after an impact? My intuition was just screaming at me in this one. We have this whole story put together. It seems that people are using old theories to kind of explain how this got down here, and they don't really relate it to the actual melting of the ice cap. Is that a mistake? Things to think about. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very safe day.